Hello and welcome to News Central TV. I'm Darshan Usman. Here are some stories making headlines beyond the continent. We begin in America, where Donald Trump has now won contests in 3 states, Nevada, Iowa, and New Hampshire, making him the presumptive Republican candidate in November's general election. He also won a Republican caucus in the U.S. Virgin Islands and unincorporated territory. Donald Trump's only serious challenger left in the race, former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley, had opted not to take part in the Nevada caucus and to appear in the state's primary vote instead. Briefly addressing a victory party in Las Vegas, Donald Trump said, "If we win this state, we easily win the election in November." This signifies Mr. Trump will take all Nevada's 26 delegates, the system used by the parties to determine their presidential candidates. The Supreme Court of Colombia has denounced a violent and illegal blockade of its main headquarters by hundreds of protesters. The protesters were responding to a call of the president, Gustavo Petro, to demand that the court elect a new attorney general from a short list proposed by the president. Unionists, students, and indigenous people responded to Petro's call to demonstrate in the country's main cities, while the magistrates held an unsuccessful meeting in Bogota to elect the successor of the outgoing prosecutor, Francisco Barbosa, whom Petro accuses of wanting to overthrow him. In the late afternoon, riot police dispersed the crowd with tear gas and eventually regained control of the area. The magistrates were evacuated in vehicles escorted by police around 5:30 p.m. local time. Now in Central America, the Honduran police captured an alleged drug trafficking kingpin with a request for extradition from the United States 5 days before the start of the trial against former President Juan Orlando Hernandez in New York. The director of the National Police, Juan Manuel Aguilar, reported at the press conference that Jorge Luis Aguilar, who also called himself Luis Carlos Sandoval, was arrested in the city of San Pedro Sula. Aguilar, who has also an identity document as a Guatemalan, was requested by the federal court in the state of Texas for links related to drug trafficking. The detainee must undergo a trial in Honduras, which can take a couple of months before being handed over to officials from the United States Anti-Drug Agency. A hostage situation on a train in the west of Switzerland on Thursday night ended with a suspect killed in a police raid and the hostages safely freed. The hostage taker was armed with an axe and a knife and was speaking Farsi and English, Vaux Canton police spokesman Jean-Christophe Sauterelle said at a press conference. Now, a total of 15 hostages were taken, while 14 passengers and the conductor, with the ordeal dragging on for nearly 4 hours from around 6:35 p.m. to 10:30 p.m. Police spokesman Jean-Christophe said the motives of the perpetrators are not yet known. The hostage taker's identity, he added, was still not officially confirmed and checks were being carried out. The man was shot dead by a police officer after allegedly rushing at him with the axe. Now, according to the International Crisis Group President and CEO Comfort Ero, the United States' policy to support Ukraine against Russia's invasion has become a political football in Washington as congressional Republicans increasingly disagree with the Biden administration over financial aid to Kyiv. She further added that Russian President Vladimir Putin has taken notice that the unity that was there between the U.S. and Europe may be fraying because of how Ukraine has been caught up in the domestic politics of the U.S.
I think the U.S. is still seen as an influential player, both positively and negatively internationally. But I think increasingly there's alarm, there's concern, there is uneasiness about the uncertainty, the unpredictability, just the polarization, the division. elections. Putin is looking at this, sees that Ukraine has become a political football in Washington, sees that that sort of unity that was there between the US and Europe may be framed because, again, of how Ukraine has been caught up in the domestic politics of the US. I mean, so diplomacy is being tested. There are places where we don't see diplomacy at work when the battlefield dynamics go in a different direction, go in the wrong direction. Sudan, for example, is a classic case of where diplomacy is often been shunted to the side and where there's a preference to use war. We saw it in last year in Azerbaijan's reclaiming of Nagorno-Karabakh.
We go on a quick break now, and when we return, we have more news. Stay with us. Thank you for staying with us on Beyond the Continent. Now in Europe, French President Emmanuel Macron replaced his education minister after a series of controversies seeking to regain momentum for the final phase of his presidency under Prime Minister Gabriel Attal. Now, one of the key moves was putting former French junior tennis champion Amélie Oudéa-Castéra, already serving as sports minister, in charge of a super ministry comprising both sports and education. The presidency announced that she would be replaced by former Justice Minister Nicole Belloubet. Now, France's new education minister, Nicole, wants a dialogue with teachers to take place very quickly during the handover ceremony with the ousted minister, Amélie Oudéa-Castéra, who held the position for 28 days.
Cela exige, de mon point de vue, la mise en place très rapide d'un dialogue avec les représentants des enseignants, des chefs d'établissement, des corps d'inspection et des parents d'élèves. Je m'y attacherai dès la semaine prochaine.
Former French Justice Minister Robert Badinter, who is in 1981 brought an end to capital punishment in France, has died aged 95. Badinter, who also served as head of France's highest administrative instance, the Constitutional Council, died overnight, she said. Now, months after taking office under socialist president François Mitterrand, Badinter successfully brought a law before Parliament prohibiting capital punishment. Executions had been carried out with the use of guillotine.
Tous appris ce matin cette triste nouvelle, la disparition en effet de Robert Badinter. Je veux d'abord avoir une pensée pour son épouse, sa famille. Dire aussi ma peine à titre personnel. Je crois que la nation a perdu à coup sûr un grand homme. Un très grand avocat, un très grand garde des Sceaux qui évidemment a conduit pour notre pays l'abolition, mais aussi des réformes importantes du code pénal qui a conduit à transformer au début des années 80 la justice de notre pays. Et puis un président du Conseil constitutionnel qui a eu un rôle essentiel à jouer dans la vie de notre démocratie durant de nombreuses années. C'était aussi pour moi, je dois le dire, un sage au-delà de ses fonctions qui a toujours permis d'éclairer les décisions les plus délicates. Un hommage national lui sera rendu.
Away from that, the United States has warned Israel that staging a military offensive into Gaza's southern city of Rafah without proper planning would be a disaster. About 1.5 million Palestinians are surviving in dire humanitarian conditions. Now, the White House said it will not support major operations without due consideration for the refugees there. This comes days after Israel's leader said the military had been told to prepare to operate in Rafah. U.S. President Joe Biden said Israel's action in Gaza had been over the top, reported Israel's airstrike or Israeli airstrikes on Gaza on Friday killed at least 15 people, including 8 in Rafah. Now, to further discuss this, I'm being joined by Bolu Michael-Biyi, his foreign policy analyst. Hello, Bolu. Thank you so much for joining me this evening.
Thank you.
All right, so what are the most serious consequences of an Israeli military operation in Rafah, especially for the people living there, for the Israel military, and also for Israel's political relations with the U.S.?
Well, the most severe consequence would be death, for the people who are in that region, because a lot of people have died already and they are extremely vulnerable people. So they're already, even without any military operation there, they are just basically trying to survive. They're dying of hunger, thirst, and just bombing them or any military action there would result to total onslaught and the loss of life, massive loss of life. And the fear is that Israel may have no excuse for a suit that claims that they have committed genocide if they go ahead and carry out a military operation there.
All right, so now, but then, does the humanitarian crisis in Gaza make an Israeli military operation in Rafah more likely or less likely? And why would you think it either is more or less likely to happen?
Looking at the posture of the Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, seems to really want to have a total closure and claim quick victory over Hamas. Considering the fact that he knows that the people in that region are extremely vulnerable people and still want to carry out military operation there. And he was saying that, if they carry out military operation there, the war can be over and they can claim victory within 3 months. I feel the U.S. now coming in to mention that they should consider the civilians there can only lead to maybe a delay. I don't foresee a situation whereby they won't still carry out military operation because it appears that the Prime Minister wants that so bad.
Okay. Now, Bolu, according to reports, about 1.5 million Palestinians are actually surviving and in dire need of humanitarian assistance there. Now, I need for you to tell me, do you think that Israel actually has the capacity to safely evacuate the civilians before launching an operation?
Yeah, I feel they have the capacity, but they're not doing that so far. The best they've done so far is to inform the people ahead and give them ultimatum to relocate to another location. As the place where they are now was as a result of Israel giving them notice, and now they moved to the south from the north. And now the southern part they still want to carry out military operations there. Israel receives about over £3 billion a year in humanitarian aid, in aid of any form, from the United States, and that's the highest for any country in the world. And it's just an irony that it's creating the largest humanitarian crisis on earth right now. How can the biggest humanitarian aid be creating the biggest humanitarian crisis? Then something is wrong somewhere.
All right, so you're saying that there might be risks to the civilians no matter what happens, whether they're being evacuated or not.
Yeah, because they're already at risk. Even without any military operation, they are still very vulnerable. These people are just living hand to mouth. And then, and they fight over food, fight over water. They're just basically trying to survive. They're already at risk. There are people that are heavily at risk. And, they have nowhere else to go, And so if they carry out military operation there, it's total death. They're just expecting death, basically.
Okay. Now, there's actually a peace process going on at the moment, right? Bolu, what does the potential of an Israeli military operation in Rafah mean, especially for the current peace process, and including the role of the U.S. and the potential, for talks or mediation in the future?
Talks are ongoing, and it appears that when issues like this come up again, you now wonder what's the essence of even sitting at the table in the first place? Because Israel is talking and still not listening. They're hearing, but they're not listening. They are two different things. So it's like going a step forward and 10 steps backward, or just being on a treadmill whereby you're jogging in one position, moving forward, but not really having any direction. So it's just another setback to the peace process. It just complicates the entire matter, and it has the potential of even pitching Israel against the U.S. And it's just funny that U.S. is not actually taking a stance, because from their tone, from the rhetoric, seems like, okay, they're telling Israel that, okay, you can carry out military operations there, but just make sure you are careful in doing so. That's not what we want. We want the U.S. to stop, to actually take a stand and tell Israel outrightly, stop bombing, put people at the front. Yeah.
All right, so what role does, neighboring countries like Egypt, Jordan, and Lebanon have in this particular situation, since we're still, talking about mediation here?
Well, they cannot really do much, because it's an exclusively internal issue between Israel and Palestinian states. There's a limit to how much these countries can get involved, but they shape the outlook of the humanitarian situation in the country. For example, Egypt, by allowing humanitarian aid to pass through their borders. I feel that's the best they can do, apart from if they, in terms of practical involvement in the war.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Bolu Michael-Biyi, for joining me on the news and speaking on this.
Thank you very much. Pleasure.
Thank you. All right, moving away from that, Turkey's pro-Kurdish party on Friday selected 2 low-profile candidates to run for mayor of Istanbul after the wife of the repressed community's jailed elder statesman dropped out of the March 31 vote. The DEM party named Murat Chepni and Meral Deniz Bestes as its joint Istanbul mayoral candidates, a reflection of leftist party's tradition of naming a man and a woman as co-chairs of top posts. The party will need to decide which of them serve as mayor should the joint ticket win.
Kimseye rest, kimseye de İstanbul Büyükşehir Belediyesi'ne eş başkan adaylarımız Meral Danış Beştaş ve Murat Çepni. İstanbul Büyükşehir Belediyesi eş başkan adaylarımız Meral Danış Beştaş ve Murat Çepni. Şunu çok iyi biliyoruz ki kaybettirmek ya da kazandırmak seçeneklerine sıkıştırılamayacak kadar güçlü ve tecrübeli bir siyasal hareketiz. Dün de öyleydik, bugün de öyleyiz. Kararlarımızı kimilerine rest ya da kimilerine jest olsun diye almıyoruz. Dolayısıyla kimseye rest, kimseye de jest yapmıyoruz.
Indonesia's presidential candidates are posting light content on social media in a bid to appeal to young voters. Now, with the power to swing Indonesia's youth vote, TikTok, Instagram, and other platforms have become crucial tools in the arsenal of those vying to replace President Joko Widodo. Indonesia is home to 278 million people, and 125 million are on TikTok alone. After the first vice presidential debate last month, clips from the broadcast were viewed 300 million times in 12 hours on TikTok, with 3/4 uploaded by candidates-linked users, according to analyst Hoki Sittinger of Social Research Institute, Bandung Fei.
Demokrasi sekali lagi adalah pestanya rakyat. Presiden yang harus kita pilih adalah presiden. Baik.
Ron.
Woi.
Di atas ada drone.
Ganjar Mahfud.
And that's all on Beyond the Continent. Now you can send your eyewitness report to the WhatsApp number on the screen. Do follow us on social media. We are at News Central TV. You can watch News Central live on DSTV channel 422, Star Times channel 274, Avo TV, and YouTube. Many thanks for watching. I'm Darshan Usman.